When my brother and I first decided to go on the Mongol Rally, this 10,000-mile road trip across Europe and Asia, we were really excited for what lay before us. Credit card in hand, I went to the event's website to pay our registration fee. But then, like some other ralliers I spoke to, I had this moment where reality hit and made me briefly reconsider our plans. It came in the form of stern warnings on the event's website.
Driving across long distances on difficult and unfamiliar terrain is an extremely dangerous thing to do, which can result in severe injury and even death. These are not holidays. These are adventures, and so by their very nature are extremely risky. You really are putting both your health and life at risk.
And I was like, whoa. Up to that point, I couldn't wait to sign up, but now I was questioning whether this was actually a good idea. So for guidance, I reached out to travel blogger Sherry Ott, who did the rally herself back in 2011. Over lunch at a crowded sushi restaurant, she told me she initially had the same reaction that I had.
Reading that disclaimer, which you have to go through in order to put down your money, all of a sudden I just got into one of these modes where I'm like, holy shit, what am I doing? This is really stupid. I shouldn't do this. It's like that's when it kind of became real, right? Because it all looks like this really crazy, fun trip, right? And now the closer you get to it, the closer you get to the details of what it actually means, you kind of have like this context now that is not just like you're watching it from a TV screen, you're in it.
She wrote on her blog at the time that what started out sounding like a fun, crazy adventure was now sounding like a death march with each additional legal paragraph she read. But Sherry was a seasoned traveler. In fact, she left her corporate job 5 years earlier to pursue traveling full-time, so she was used to doing things that her friends and family members back home who don't travel as much might consider risky.
For me, once I stopped to think about it a little bit, there's things we encounter every day on our way to work or whatever in our daily life that can also be just as dangerous. And if we had to get up every morning and sign a waiver before we went out the door about all the things that could go wrong that day, then we'd probably never leave and go to work. And, that's really what this was.
After giving it some thought, she concluded that if she thoroughly researched her route and took some common-sense precautions, she could avoid many of the potential dangers while having the adventure of a lifetime. Long story short, she and her teammates made it to the finish line without any major mishaps, and she now says she's glad she got past her initial hesitation, since the rally was one of the coolest experiences she's ever had.
Honestly, it gave me a lot of confidence that I could do stuff that I didn't think I could do. One of the things that intrigued me about it is I had never driven in a foreign country, really. And I remember that feeling of being so nervous. And now I'm just like, oh, yeah, I'm going to Germany. I'm going to get a car and drive around. So in some ways, it's like made all of that accessible to me, which is really cool. It's something that I hang my hat on, that I accomplished it, that it was this crazy thing that most people would never have the guts to do. And I did it. And in the end, we also raised money and inspired a whole bunch of other people to do the same. So I might not ever have kids, might not ever get married, but to me, it was one of the things that I think when I look back on my life will be in the top 10 things I did.
I'm Scott Gurian. I'm a longtime public radio and print reporter, and I've always loved traveling and experiencing different cultures. So I've created this podcast called Far From Home to document my adventures. To start off, I'm telling the story of this massive journey my brother and I took with our friends, raising money for charity. We drove nearly 11,000 miles.
11,000?
That's right, a quarter of the way around the Earth, from London to Mongolia, through 18 countries, 8 time zones, 5 mountain ranges, and a few deserts, in a ridiculously tiny car.
It's like the Beverly Hillbillies.
It's not for the faint of heart.
It's the adventure, isn't it? It's just the thing of pushing yourself to the absolute limit, because I think it's going to take us out of our comfort zone, but in a really good way.
If you're just joining me, I suggest you first go back and listen to all the previous episodes in order to get up to speed and for all of this to make a bit more sense. From language barriers to car trouble, getting horribly lost, to paying bribes to shady traffic cops, it's been quite an amazing experience, and over the coming episodes, I'll be bringing all of you along with me for the ride. On this episode, we embark on our journey across Europe, heading towards the Turkish border. And if you heard the last show, you'll remember that this was just one day after Turkey's attempted coup, so we were keeping a close eye on the news, continuing to weigh the potential risks, and considering alternate routes if the situation called for it. We'll hear more from Sherry Ott later on, but let me pick up where we left off on that Sunday morning in July, as my brother Drew and I exited the Goodwood Raceway in southern England and set out on our journey with our fellow ralliers along the windy country roads. So we've just left the racetrack. We've been going, 10 minutes? Not even?
About that.
And we already just passed someone on the side of the road broken down.
I think it was an old Renault or something.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was like
it
an
looked
old...
like they maybe had a flat or they were messing with something in the undercarriage.
No, they were underneath with some tools. That actually, I think it was something with their muffler. It looked like maybe it was disattached or something. They haven't even gotten 10 minutes away.
If they don't make it further than that, I hope that they get an award as well.
They really should. A few hours later, we arrived at the border station in Folkestone, ready to legally exit the UK and cross over to the mainland. As my brother pulled up in our sticker-covered rally car, the guy at the checkpoint was clearly amused.
How you doing? Hello, mate.
He jokingly reminded us that we'd have to drive back on the right side of the road once we got to France. Then he handed our passports back to us and sent us on our way.
Cheers, gents.
Cheers.
Thanks very much. Go out the next window. And then after that, you've got French passport control just ahead, yeah?
Okay, thank you.
Cheers.
So what country is it in between? That's no man's land, he explained to us.
We can do anything.
Well, try it and see what happens.
Have a good one.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
For technical, legal purposes, we have just exited the UK. We are in no man's land.
Stupid.
Well, we're already driving to Mongolia. What more do you want?
Now we're entering France.
That's it.
Apparently, we're in France.
Okay. Here we go. Of course, we weren't actually geographically in France. To get there, we'd need to drive onto the train to take us under the English Channel. But we couldn't even get that far before our friends Rosie and Jane experienced the first minor drama of our trip.
Whoa!
Wow. So Team Sugar and Spice in front of us just went under. They went under this metal thing. It says maximum height, and it's swinging back and forth. Wait, let me get out. Let me see if ours is going to hit.
Ours is going to be good.
Hold up. Are you sure? Let me look. Yeah, we're good. Okay, we'll be good. Jane was driving, and she said Rosie had warned her, but she didn't realize there was so much gear on her Nissan Micra's roof.
And I'm thinking, what's she talking about? I'm in a Micra. Of course there's plenty of room. Straight through.
She forgot the two jerry cans and the tyres on top.
Well, luckily it hit the tyres, not the jerry cans.
Yeah.
The roof's a little dented. In fact, the roof's a lot
Significantly dented.
Oh, wow, I didn't notice that.
But you see, the good thing is, I'm sure there is a good thing to this. I'm just trying to work out what it is. Well, it just means that water will drain off it really easily now because of the dent.
So it pushed the tire down into the roof.
It certainly did. Absolutely.
Well done. That made my day.
Now with our first battle wounds, we continued on to the Channel. And if you've never seen it, driving onto a train is actually amazingly cool. About half an hour later, we emerged on the mainland. Here we are on the other side of the English Channel now, in Calais, France.
That's beautiful out.
Yeah.
It's sunny in France.
I know, it's sunny. How does that work?
It's beautiful.
The moment we cross the English Channel, the sun comes out. And the weather wasn't the only thing we noticed that was different. Just as my brother and I had gotten used to navigating the British roads, everything was changing again. I found it fairly easy getting used to driving on the left side just because the steering wheel is already on the right and it was so different than what we're used to. But now this is just kind of screwing with our head, I think, having the steering wheel on the right but driving on the right as well.
I think we all just need to watch out, be a second set of eyes.
If we're tired, that's when we start to make mistakes.
But even if we were a little tired, we were running on adrenaline. Like Sherry Ott, I had never driven in a foreign country before this trip, and it was exciting. There's something about being behind the wheel with the freedom to go at your own pace or pull over to sightsee wherever you'd like that makes it so much more interesting than a typical vacation. Plus, I know it's a total cliche, but it was cool being in Europe with the melding of so many languages and cultures. As we drove, we started counting the countries of the license plates around us. After a few hours' drive, we arrived at our first pit stop. So we are somewhere in the countryside of Belgium, and we are meeting our friend Eric and his family, who we met in Thailand last Christmas and New Year's, and Yeah, our horn doesn't work. We just noticed that. So, but here. He said he left. He said meet him this way. I think this is
now
where
we're
we
driving
go.
through a cornfield.
Yeah, we're in the middle of a cornfield. I don't know I think we may have just made a wrong turn. Hold on. Let me look at my phone.
Yeah, please. I bet you this is their house right here.
I don't know. Yeah, it says his name there.
Hello.
Hello, you made it.
Eric's wife Christine greeted us as we pulled up to their beautiful home on a hillside in the country, and the two of them proved to be wonderful hosts.
So, you're hungry? Hungry?
Maybe thirsty first.
Thirsty?
Yeah, we'll have, like I said, we can't stay too long, but, you know.
Yeah, okay, but a cava, a wine, a local beer, a normal beer, gin tonic.
Local. We're in Belgium. How could he not drink a local beer in Belgium? So to give you a bit of the backstory, my brother and I first got to know Eric and Christine on a hiking and rafting trip we took in Asia the year before, and we immediately bonded. Eric was fascinated to hear about our plans for the rally since he was planning a similar road trip with his friends to the West African country of Benin. Along the way, he'd passed through some sort of dangerous areas like Mauritania and Western Sahara. He'd also be on the road for about 4 weeks, which is a long time to be away as a small business owner. But he had his mind made up.
You know, I'm in my midlife. I want to do something special. I have to do it now, not in 10 years. Maybe in 10 years, my back or my knee, or I have to do it now.
And what does your family think of you doing this?
Very nice. Yes. She is so happy. I'm gone for 1 month. You know,
No. I'm not even talking about being gone. I'm saying going, on this trip.
Oh, she's happy.
Yeah.
Yes. Tell the guys you're happy.
You have your head down in your arms. And when did he tell you about it first?
He told me when he booked it, and
after he had already booked it.
After he already booked it, but I know him for 20 years. He has a lot of dreams, and I know if he has a dream, he has to fulfill. Otherwise, he's not happy. So I can't say anything against. He will do it.
Are there other dreams he's had? Anything remotely like this?
He has dreams all the time, but as long as it's safe, because there is a crew going with him, and there is a good friend. There are a lot of people who already done it several times, so that makes me a bit more comfortable with what he will do, but I wouldn't do it myself.
We compared notes with Eric about the kinds of cars we were driving on our trips and the sorts of preparations we had made. We'd only planned to stop off for an hour or so to say hello, then continue on to spend the night in southern Germany. But Christine started bringing out plates of lamb, olives, and freshly picked cherries. Jane, for one, was impressed.
I'm sitting here looking out. This is it's almost like British aristocracy, isn't it, this?
With many of the other Mongol rally teams sleeping in tents and subsisting on a diet of ramen noodles and potato chips, the paradox of the situation wasn't lost on us.
This is unreal. This is fantastic.
You're putting us to shame, you know that? If the other teams found out that you're like whining and dining us. It was late in the day, and we still had a 3-hour drive ahead of us, which none of us were really looking forward to. Then Eric made us an offer that was hard to ignore. We could stay with him and Christine for the night, and they'd take us to Ghent, a nearby city that just so happened to be hosting its annual music festival while we were in town. We debated it amongst ourselves.
I think that this is an exceptional circumstance in that, we're not going to have incredible dinners and company like this. And, yesterday was really tiring and stressful for all of us. But at the same time, of course, we do have somewhat of a schedule we need to stick to.
And we need to modify our existing plans. We were going to stay with a friend of a friend in Cologne.
Tell him the people you're in convoy with
are really dippy women.
Have problems with their roof rack.
Which is true.
It's not a lie. So your integrity is completely intact.
And we have to do a repair.
What do you guys?
I would be delighted.
Wait, I'm going to open another bottle and then we go decide.
I'm fairly certain that next bottle makes the decision for us.
I mean,
this is
incredible.
It's an out of the ordinary circumstance.
This is amazing.
It's like this little devil, isn't he? He's got little pointy horns and a little pointy tail. Hello, strangers, drink my wine. Drink my wine, stay in my house.
In the end, we all agreed it was kind of a no-brainer.
We were running a little bit behind time anyway because
Everything took longer today.
everything took longer. You know, we should have been here an hour and a half early.
Yeah, we were a couple of hours behind,
No, I mean, you know, yes, we have a plan. The reason we had a plan was because we needed to have specific dates to give to embassies for our visas. But we've got flexibility up
But
until
this is
Iran.
like sailing. The wind has changed.
My God.
So we have to change our route.
That's about as philosophical as it gets.
Yeah. Okay.
So we set to work revising our route.
Munich would be about halfway, which means we also get to drive through Luxembourg.
Another country.
Yeah, baby.
Would that be the plan?
There is no plan anymore. The
Plan's gone.
The plan.
There was a plan, and now there isn't a plan.
A few hours later, we found ourselves walking around the medieval Flemish city of Ghent. This is just awful, my brother joked at one point, but the reality was we were all blown away by how beautiful and lively the city was. Even though it was late on a Sunday night, the streets were absolutely packed with people dining al fresco, drinking beers along the river, and dancing to live music at stages all throughout the town. The best part was that this was a total surprise. You know, when we woke up that morning, this was not at all how we expected to end the day.
Well, that was fun.
That's just extraordinary. Our own personal tour.
Yeah. I feel like every time I've traveled, the best experiences I've ever had have been when I've stayed with friends who live in those places who could show me around, you know. Those are always the best tour guides.
Well, you see a different side of things, don't you? You see a more intimate side of things. You see where the locals go for their coffee, where they shop, you know, what they like to do, rather than what's popular on TripAdvisor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, much more authentic experience. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, you know, if you've never been to a place, you have to do the touristy things as well.
Sure.
But afterwards, then you do the other stuff.
So we all agreed it was a really great night, but there was one particular moment when I was walking along chatting with Eric that I felt a bit uncomfortable.
Is this like a holiday like people have off from work, or it's just a festival now?
The people here taking holiday, 10 days.
Okay.
Because they don't work. It's holiday time. It's party time.
Is it just a festival? Fireworks, yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah, okay. You've had your issues in Belgium, I know.
You could hear my nervous laughter there. The issues I was referring to were the series of ISIS suicide bombings in the Brussels airport and subway just 4 months earlier that had killed 35 people and injured more than 300. And that's not all that was floating around in the back of my mind. Less than 2 weeks before we left on the rally, a terrorist in France drove a truck into a crowd celebrating Bastille Day, and nearly 90 people died. That was followed by an Afghan refugee in Germany attacking train passengers with an axe and a knife. Then, a few days later, a mass shooting in a crowded shopping mall in Munich. Basically, if you were an American following the news from afar, last summer seemed like a dangerous time to travel abroad, so it was hard not to feel at least a bit on edge. Over breakfast the next morning, I asked Eric how he saw things.
I mean, do you think people still feel Belgium's dangerous, or is that... Yeah?
Because our image is not so good for the moment in the world with all those attacks. But the world is so big, you know. Brussels, it's 40 kilometers from here, but look here, you're in the middle of the woods.
The countryside, yeah.
Yeah, the countryside, so that's a problem.
And we don't feel at all unsafe here, obviously. No. You know, it's
very safe. Very safe.
Yeah. And in Belgium, I mean, people's perceptions, they feel like that was a one-time thing.
Maybe, but, you know, I think at the end of the story, you know, what can we do? What can we do? Right. Nothing about it.
Yeah. And most average people like yourself, I mean, you go on with your daily lives. That, in many ways, didn't really affect you out here.
No.
You wouldn't even know it happened if you didn't have the news.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
We can't, because otherwise we give them what they want.
Yeah.
To be scary, don't come out anymore. No, it's no problem.
Yeah.
Life continues.
We said goodbye to Eric and Christine and continued on our journey, but I kept thinking about this question of perception versus reality. The irony was that to people like some of our family members who don't travel frequently, a place like Western Europe seemed safe, just because it's more familiar. And indeed, it was fairly safe. but recent events had proven that wasn't always the case. Still, their long-standing preconceived notions trumped whatever was happening in the news, so no one was at all concerned when we said we were going to Belgium, just like they weren't concerned about me on my previous trips to Spain and London, even though all those places had also experienced terrorism at one point or another. On the other hand, they were really nervous about us driving through Iran, despite the fact that everything we heard was that it was actually a pretty safe place for tourists. Before we left on our trip, when I was having lunch with Shariat at that sushi restaurant in New York, I asked what she made of this and if she thought we were taking on any greater risks traveling through a part of the world that might seem a bit scary to folks back home.
I don't know that the risk is anymore. It's harder because you don't know the language and the culture and all that kind of stuff. And it takes 20 times longer to get anything done, even filling up with petrol. I mean, like, because you've got to figure all that out. But that doesn't necessarily make it more dangerous. It's harder. And if I think about just sheer numbers of the number of people I come in contact with on the subway, on my walk to wherever, down the street, versus the number of people I come in contact with in Kazakhstan, my odds are much greater here to have something go wrong, as an innocent bystander even, than it would be there. You know, if you don't know how to drive, maybe you're taking on more risk, but I knew that was the one thing I knew how to do. I could drive.
She advised us to do some research about the places we were going, both to calm our own nerves and to have answers ready when family members approached us with their questions, so we could show we had thought everything through and planned for various scenarios. Plus, we made a plan to stay in regular communication with folks back home, and we got a satellite device so they could track us on a map and exchange messages with us from wherever we were in the world. Back on the road, we continued our journey eastward across Europe, and while none of us were very worried about Iran, there was another potentially more pressing concern on the horizon. You see, if we continued on our current route, the Turkish border was now just 5 days away. We've been watching the situation in the 72 hours since military officers staged a failed coup, and we were still trying to decide for sure if we should forge ahead or modify our plans. Up to that point, we had opted to proceed with caution, but once we arrived at our next stop in the mountains of southern Germany, we figured it was probably time to make our final decision. My brother raised the issue.
I've spoken to a couple friends today, and Farah, my girlfriend, just emailed me a whole bunch of stuff. But in general, what are the feelings for Turkey right now? The better part of me is honestly just kind of saying this out of, concerns, A, from my girlfriend, B, of course, from our dad, who doesn't yet know where we're going, or if we're going there.
We didn't know for sure ourselves until now.
And he's gonna
freak out.
He's gonna freak out.
Oh,
yeah, he's going to.
Yeah.
He said that before we even left, and that was before any of this happened.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you don't want people worrying unnecessarily, but equally, making a decision when we're on the ground. And I mean, if you guys get to the point, well. Okay, let's have another conversation. If we don't go through Turkey, what do we do?
It's very complicated, yeah. I mean, there's some people who are talking about taking a ferry across the Black Sea, but I think it's very limited schedules.
We'd have to reorganise where we meet our guide in Iran.
Because they were going to meet us at the Turkish-Iranian border, and we'd have to go through Georgia then.
Of course, but it just, I think, if what happened last Saturday kicked off this coming Thursday or Friday, absolutely, I would be anxious. I would be not wanting to go there, because it's not what's happening on that day, it's what's going to happen immediately afterwards. And I think because we've had a week to see what's happening, I think things have calmed down. I mean, this sort of thing happens in places like Turkey a lot. It'll go very quiet for a while now whilst the plotters start to regroup and replot. I mean,
I think Turkey is fine. I really do.
Completely relaxed about Turkey.
If we want to miss Istanbul, fine. Yeah, absolutely fine. But I think the rest of Turkey, within reason, is fine. My friend's in Turkey at the minute. I mean, she's down south, obviously down on the south coast, but she says the restaurants are all full. Everybody is just getting on with life.
Yeah, I've spoken to a couple of people today. One, a photographer who did the Mongol Rally in the past, who's there. She said things seem to be fine. I have another friend who's in New York, a photographer in New York, whose family lives in Istanbul. her recommendation was essentially common sense. She basically said, don't go out at night.
Yeah, don't go out at night. Don't go and be voyeuristic around any, big, large group meetings and that sort of thing. But that is common sense.
I think we just avoid it. We just don't go into Istanbul. We just
Or Ankara.
Or Ankara, yeah.
So we settled on a plan, and while we were still uncertain of what lay before us, we now felt more confident we had made the right choice. In the days ahead, the roads would get rougher and the journey more interesting, but here, early on in our trip, we were starting to learn the value of being flexible and willing to adapt to changing situations, venturing outside of our comfort zones, and yes, at times, taking risks. Because sometimes it's the unpredictable experiences that are the most exciting and memorable. Visit my website at farfromhomepodcast.org to see photos from my trip and a video of our little car going as fast as it can while everyone else zooms past us on the Autobahn. While you're there, you could also drop me a line, sign up for my newsletter to get notified when new shows are released, or follow me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Coming up on the next episode, the highway ends in Eastern Europe and the real rally begins. Plus, we experience some car troubles and end up at our first mechanic.
So they found a secondhand tank that's the same as ours, but it's in the same condition and they don't trust it. And the only way that they can get a new tank is not until Monday. And today's Saturday, and obviously we can't wait till Monday. So what they've done is they just took the tank out of the car. They're cleaning it right now, drying it, and siliconing all of the seams.
As I do at the end of every episode, I want to thank my good friends at the Public Radio Exchange for all their behind-the-scenes technical help. If you're not familiar with them, definitely check them out at prx.org to find lots more cool audio to listen to. Thanks also to Sherry Ott. You can visit Ott's World, her excellent travel blog, at ottsworld.com. Finally, please remember to give a rating or write a quick review of this podcast in iTunes if you like what you hear, because it will help other listeners find it. And please tell a friend. Thanks for listening.
Here's the thing. On this trip, all this planning shit is meaningless. The true experience is going to be the ride. Getting to your destination is going to be anticlimactic. Leaving is going to be whatever once you leave. It's all about the daily struggles and your achievements and the unplanned stuff and the people you meet. That's what's going to make the trip.